You've been waiting, you've prayed, you've hoped, you've cried in the dark when no one else could hear you. Maybe life has taken more than you ever thought you could lose. Maybe your faith feels thin, stretched between what you see and what you used to believe. But I want to tell you today, God hasn't forgotten your name. You may be in a season where it feels like heaven has gone quiet. You've prayed every prayer you know how to pray. You've stood in faith, waited, believed, and yet nothing seems to be shifting. It's easy to start wondering if maybe God has forgotten you, if perhaps your name got lost somewhere in the noise of the world. But friend, God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you. His silence is not neglect, it's formation. What looks like stillness is often sacred construction. Think about a seed. When it's planted in the soil, it disappears for a while. No one can see the roots pushing down, the life beginning to form beneath the surface. But the silence beneath the dirt is not death, it's development. In the same way, when God hides you for a season, it isn't punishment, it's protection. He's strengthening your roots so that when your blessing comes, you can carry it without breaking. There's a passage in Isaiah that says, "For since the world began, no ear has heard and no eye has seen a God like you, who works for those who wait for Him." Notice that. God is at working while you're waiting. You may not see the evidence yet, but something divine is taking shape behind the curtain. He's aligning people, preparing opportunities, softening hearts, so that when it's time, everything fits perfectly into place. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is learning to rest while God builds what only He can build. You don't have to force what He's already promised. You just have to trust the process, even when the process feels like pain. The waiting room of faith can be uncomfortable, but it's also where spiritual maturity is born. It's where God teaches you to rely not on outcomes, but on His presence. If you're walking through that quiet season right now, take heart. God sees every tear, every effort, every moment you've stayed faithful when it would have been easier to quit. He hasn't turned away from you. He's drawing closer, whispering in the stillness, shaping you into the person your future requires. The silence isn't the end. It's the sound of preparation. And sometimes it's in that holy quiet that your faith begins to breathe again, leading you gently toward what comes next. There are times in life when everything seems to be moving slower than you hoped. You've prayed for the breakthrough, believed for the healing, stood firm for the promotion, but nothing seems to be happening. The doors stay closed, the answer's delayed, and the silence stretches longer than your strength. In those moments, it's easy to think maybe God has said no. But the truth is, delay doesn't mean denial. When God makes you wait, it's not because He's withholding something. It's because He's preparing something. Think of a child asking their father for a gift that isn't ready yet. The father doesn't say no because he doesn't love the child. He says, "Not yet," because the timing isn't right. The same is true with our Heavenly Father. His "not yet" is not rejection, it's protection. He knows what you can handle, and He knows when your heart, your character, and your circumstances have matured enough to hold the blessing He has in store. David was anointed as king long before he wore the crown. God had already chosen him, but there were still battles to fight and lessons to learn. If David had become king too soon, he might have lacked the wisdom to lead. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was the workshop of preparation. Every delay has purpose when it's held in God's hands. Maybe right now you feel like you've been overlooked or forgotten. But friend, what's yours cannot pass you by. When it's your time, no person, no situation, no circumstance can keep you from what God has already written in your destiny. Until then, don't let disappointment turn into doubt. Every prayer, every act of faith, every tear you've shed has been seen by heaven. When nothing seems to move, remind yourself, God's clock runs perfectly. He doesn't miss a moment. You may not see progress on the surface, but under the soil of faith, something is growing. He's aligning the right doors, shaping your future, and building the strength you'll need when your blessing arrives. The delay isn't God saying no. It's His gentle whisper saying, hold on, I'm still working. And sometimes that sacred pause becomes the very place where faith deepens and the heart learns to trust again, readying you for what's to come. There will come a time in every believer's life when the road ahead doesn't make sense. You've done everything right. You've prayed, obeyed, stayed faithful, and yet the path feels clouded, uncertain, even unfair. It's in those moments that true faith begins, because faith doesn't live in what we understand. It lives in what we trust. Faith begins where understanding ends. When Abraham left his home, God didn't give him a map. He simply said, go to the land I will show you. No directions, no details, just a promise. Abraham didn't need to see the whole picture. He only needed to know that God was guiding the steps. Sometimes God will withhold the details because if we saw the entire journey, we might never take the first step. His ways are higher than ours, and His plans are often bigger than what our minds can grasp. There's a quiet beauty in learning to rest without knowing, to walk forward even when you can't see the road. That's not weakness, that's worship. When you say, God, I don't understand, but I still trust you, that's one of the most powerful prayers you can ever pray. It tells heaven that your faith isn't built on results, but on relationship. Maybe you're standing in a season right now where the answers haven't come, the prayers haven't been fulfilled, and the path feels uncertain. You're looking for signs, for clarity, for anything to hold on to. But all you hear is silence. Friend, that silence is not absence. God is not ignoring you. He's inviting you to lean in closer. Sometimes He hides the details not to frustrate you, but to draw your heart nearer to His voice. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That means there will be days when you have to release your need to know and simply choose to believe. You may not understand the why right now, but one day you'll look back and see the thread of His grace woven through it all. When the questions get heavy and the answers stay hidden, remember, faith isn't about having all the information. It's about having the courage to walk with the one who does. And it's often in that quiet surrender that peace begins to bloom, leading your heart gently toward the next truth waiting to unfold. There will come a time in every believer's life when the road ahead doesn't make sense. You've done everything right. You've prayed, obeyed, stayed faithful, and yet the path feels clouded, uncertain, even unfair. It's in those moments that true faith begins, because faith doesn't live in what we understand, it lives in what we trust. Faith begins where understanding ends. When Abraham left his home, God didn't give him a map. He simply said, go to the land I will show you. No directions, no details, just a promise. Abraham didn't need to see the whole picture. He only needed to know that God was guiding the steps. Sometimes God will withhold the details because if we saw the entire journey, we might never take the first step. His ways are higher than ours, and His plans are often bigger than what our minds can grasp. There's a quiet beauty in learning to rest without knowing, to walk forward even when you can't see the road. That's not weakness, that's worship. When you say, God, I don't understand, but I still trust you, that's one of the most powerful prayers you can ever pray. It tells heaven that your faith isn't built on results, but on relationship. Maybe you're standing in a season right now where the answers haven't come, the prayers haven't been fulfilled, and the path feels uncertain. You're looking for signs, for clarity, for anything to hold on to, but all you hear is silence. Friend, that silence is not absence. God is not ignoring you. He's inviting you to lean in closer. Sometimes He hides the details not to frustrate you, but to draw your heart nearer to His voice. Proverbs says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." That means there will be days when you have to release your need. Maybe you've faced a loss you didn't see coming, or a betrayal that left a scar deeper than words can reach. It's easy to think those broken places mean you've fallen too far or failed too much. But friend, what if those broken seasons are not the end of your story? What if they're the birthplace of something new? Broken seasons birth stronger believers. When a seed breaks open underground, it looks like destruction. It splits apart, its shell shatters, and it disappears into darkness. But that breaking is not death, it's the beginning of growth. In the same way, when life breaks us open, when dreams collapse and plans fall apart, something deeper begins to take root. God uses the soil of sorrow to grow the fruit of strength. The very pain you thought would bury you can become the ground where your next miracle grows. The psalmist said, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Notice He doesn't stand far off. He draws near. God doesn't avoid your brokenness. He meets you there. Every tear, every ache, every whispered prayer in the night is heard. Sometimes He allows us to walk through these valleys not to punish us, but to prepare us. What He builds in your pain, He will one day use to comfort someone else's. Think of Joseph. Betrayed by his brothers, forgotten in prison, he could have lost faith. Yet in every painful season, God was shaping him into the man who would one day save a nation. If Joseph hadn't faced the pit or the prison, he wouldn't have been ready for the palace. What looked like breaking was actually building. When your heart feels heavy, remember this: God never wastes a wound. The very place that hurts the most may become the place He uses the greatest. Every moment of pain can hold a hidden promise if you let God use it. And when you start to see that even the breaking has purpose, you'll find that your faith grows quieter, deeper, and stronger, ready to lead you gently into the next lesson grace has to offer. There are moments in life when it feels like goodness has passed you by. Maybe the joy you once carried has dimmed, or the faith you once held so tightly feels like it's slipping through your fingers. You look around and see others moving forward, doors opening, blessings flowing, and you wonder, God, did you forget about me? But friend, God's goodness has not left your life. It may be quiet right now, but it's not gone. God's goodness will find you again. Sometimes His blessings don't arrive as quickly as we expect, because He's teaching us to recognize His presence in the stillness. We often associate God's goodness with happy endings, answered prayers, healed bodies, restored dreams. But the truth is, His goodness is woven into every season, even the ones that break us. The breath in your lungs, the strength to get up again, the small moments of peace that come when you least expect them. That's God's goodness quietly holding you together. In the book of Psalms, David wrote, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." Notice, he didn't say, "I'll chase after it." He said, "It will follow me." That means even when you can't feel it, even when your faith feels weak, God's goodness is still pursuing you. You may have lost your way, but His mercy hasn't lost sight of you. There's a story I love about a farmer whose field was struck by a storm. His crops were ruined, his barn destroyed. Weeks later, when the sun rose again, the man saw green shoots sprouting through the broken soil. The very storm that looked like it had taken everything had actually planted something new. God's goodness often shows up that way, quietly, unexpectedly after the storm. Even when you've stopped believing in yourself, God still believes in you. His mercy doesn't run out when your strength does. You may have stumbled, doubted, or fallen, but grace knows how to find its way back to you. So if you're weary today, take a breath and whisper, "God, I know you're not done with me." Because somewhere beyond what you can see, His goodness is already on the way, ready to lead your heart gently toward the next truth He wants you to learn. There are times in life when hope feels like a distant memory. You once believed with your whole heart, but life happened, dreams faded, prayers seemed unanswered, and disappointments left a quiet ache where faith used to live. It's easy to think hope is gone forever, that your heart is too weary to believe again. But friend, hope isn't lost, it's just buried under disappointment. It's still there, waiting for the light of faith to reach it once more. Think of a winter field covered in snow. Everything looks dead and forgotten, but underneath the frozen ground, seeds are sleeping, waiting for spring. That's how hope works. You may not see it right now, but it's resting beneath the surface of your pain, ready to rise again when God breathes on it. All it takes is one whisper, "God, teach me to believe again," and heaven leans close. There's a story in the book of Ezekiel where God brings the prophet to a valley full of dry bones. It was a picture of lifelessness, of everything that once had potential now lying still. But then God asks Ezekiel, "Can these bones live again?" Ezekiel doesn't answer with certainty. He says, "Lord, only you know." And that's the place where hope begins to stir, not in certainty, but in surrender. God tells him to speak life into what was dead, and as he does, the bones begin to move, breath returns. What seemed lost begins to live again. Maybe that's where you are today, standing in your own valley, surrounded by the remains of what used to be. You don't have to know how God will do it, you just have to invite Him to. Hope doesn't demand explanations, it responds to His presence. Even the faintest prayer, the smallest spark of faith, is enough for God to start moving. When you whisper, "Teach me to believe again," you're not starting from weakness, you're starting from honesty. And God meets honesty with mercy. He takes the fragments of your faith and shapes them into something new. So if your heart feels tired and your faith feels buried, remember, hope hasn't died. It's only waiting for the warmth of God's grace to call it back to life, gently leading you toward the next chapter He's already written for you. Maybe you've walked through seasons of silence, waited longer than you thought you could, faced moments that tested everything you believed. Maybe you've wondered if God still sees you, if His promises still stand. But friend, every quiet night, every tear, every prayer that felt unanswered, it all mattered. None of it was wasted. God has been working all along. In the waiting, He was strengthening you. In the breaking, He was shaping you. In the silence, He was speaking to your heart in ways words could never reach. Every delay had a divine purpose. Every detour was leading you closer to destiny. Something good is coming your way, not because of luck, not because you earned it, but because you are deeply loved by a faithful God. The same God who brought light out of darkness, who turned Joseph's prison into a palace, who called Lazarus from the grave. He's still moving today, and He hasn't forgotten about you. This is your reminder to lift your eyes again, to breathe again, to believe again. The pain you've carried is not the end of your story. It's the soil where your next miracle is taking root. God's goodness is on the horizon, quiet, steady, unstoppable. So wherever you are right now, whisper it softly, "Lord, teach me to believe again." Let that be your prayer, your declaration, your beginning. Because when you open your heart to hope, heaven starts to move. Something good is coming your way. You may not see it yet, but you will. And when it arrives, you'll realize it was worth every moment of the waiting.